The hour of 7 o'clock having arrived, I call the April 9th, 2025 meeting of the Columbia Borough Historical Architectural Review Board to order. Please take the roll.
Member Mountain.
Here.
Member Carrigan. Here. Member Brandt. Member Barley.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Peter. Chairperson Lowe.
Here. Thank you, Paula. Next order of business, we all please rise and pledge the flag. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes from the February 12th, 2025 meeting? Yes. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll motion to approve.
Steve motions.
Second.
Seconds. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, hearing none. Call for a vote on the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. New business. Paula, would you please review the COA for 328 South 2nd Street?
For 38 South 2nd Street?
38, sorry.
That's okay. Sure. It's new construction of a 207 square foot stairway structure to provide access from existing museum to the section of property across Bank Avenue. I believe they're here.
If the applicants would like to come up to the podium and describe their project, welcome to.
My name is James Abbott. I'm the Executive Director of the Stein and Bonhess Foundation, as well as Wrightsbury Mansion. And as a museum, Wrightsbury Mansion has existed for 47 years. And the campus, as developed by the museum founders, the house built in 1738 was restored, furnished, and opened as a historic house museum from May through the end of October every year. With that, a building in the 1970s was built. It's known as the cottage, and that was intended to be the administrative offices of the museum. That building now is planned to be another art museum, another museum. It will celebrate the collections, the art collections assembled by Mr. and Mrs. Richard C. Bonhess, the couple that restored Wrightsbury Mansion. To that, there is a 4-room library that focuses on architecture, landscape design, world history, art history. And that was developed mainly for the curators of the museum to use as reference. We are developing that into the Richard C. Bonhess Foundation Library and Archive, and that will be open to the public one day a week for the professional librarian service. So that, the cottage, that started out as a utilitarian offices, will become a second museum and a resource for scholars, researchers in the area. To that, there is another parcel of land that we own that has the 1883 railroad freight building that eventually we will develop into a year-round museum that will complement Wrightsbury Mansion. So when you are visiting the property from November 1st to the end of April, and Wrightsbury Mansion is closed, you will be able to at least get some sense of the historic house in this year-round museum. It will also have a changing gallery space, exhibition space, etc. But we're here tonight to talk about the cottage and the existing museum campus as it stands, and how we want to develop it, how we want to make it more user-friendly, more publicly accessible operation. And And who's that?
George Zimmerman with Years in Hoffman Architecture. I'm working on this project here. So at the site plan, which you were describing, we're looking at the property which we're doing improvements on. So on the southwest side of this property, you scroll down a little bit. There you go. So right here, yeah, on the street,
Mm-hmm.
right here is this proposed construction that we're putting here. So on the opposite side of the bank avenue here is a property that the foundation will not be connected to. That's a connected campus facility. That's where he's describing the railroad museum. So this structure's purpose is to have connecting link between this area here, where the cottages and the library, and the museum down here. With a grade change from Bank Avenue up to this level for about 6 feet. So it requires stairs to go up to the elevation for people walking. We're also planning a ramp for accessible pathway as well along this side. So this gateway structure that we're proposing is one utilitarian for getting people up to the grade level, and it also serves as kind of a security component along Park Avenue, kind of get that avenue a little bit presence at the street for security purposes. So architecturally speaking, we borrowed the vocabulary of the existing cottage here. It was built in the 1970s. It was made to be kind of a rural English, almost Tudor style architecture that we're borrowing from here. So we're still trying to make it complement this site. And then from Second Street up here, visually, it's not very prominent, obviously, from the Second Street. So we're not detracting from the most historic building here, which is the Great Mansion. So in some of these pictures here, we have some photographs for reference. So that's Bank Avenue looking northeast, where you can really see anything like that. But that's where the structure would be.
Jordan, is that a gate behind the ivy?
Yeah, there's a retaining wall and there's the gate with vegetation.
Okay.
We'll just go to the next photograph. So that is the view from Second Street looking southwest. I believe this here is the cottage building that we're seeing. So it's barely even visible if you're actually standing on access down that.
I guess that is my main question. From where will you be able to see this?
Right. So Bank Avenue is going to be right adjacent to Bank Avenue. It's not the most of the property.
Okay.
And if you keep scrolling, there's another. Yeah, this is looking down the driveway. So if you're up the driveway here at Second Street, looking down, right here is where it's being put. It should be between this is the cottage building that we're talking about, the library, and this is the garden kind of set the shed here. So it's right between those two structures. Next photo, I think that is superimposed. Maybe I'll kind of help with the elevation. So this side here is what you see from Bank Avenue. So it's double door gate that will be open during operation. And then on the other side here, that's visible from Second Street looking down. Notice the grade change here. Looking at a window with a cupola.
So from the Second Street view, if you can really even see it from Second Street, you're basically looking at a one-story structure that, I'll call it a shed, but it's not really a shed. But from Bank Avenue, it will basically look like a two-story structure.
Correct. It's the height from you're seeing.
Or 1.5 stories,
Right.
because of the grade. Sure.
There's a 6 foot difference in elevation between the sides.
And from Second Street proper, this building is not visible.
Right.
The photographs, you'd actually have to enter the property, you'd be halfway down the access drive to then come face to face.
You really can't even see the cottage
cutting down trees and the like with a maintenance issue.
Sure,
But yes, the original intent was that it would always be screened with trees, so you'd never see the cottage. But unfortunately, to the detriment of the building itself.
The cottage is lovely in its own.
Absolutely. It's gonna be great with public tours, same hours as the museum. That's the historic.
As far as materials, we're basically borrowing the same materials as the cottage has, so painted wood siding above, and then fully decorated painted wall, a real stone veneer. Then for the roof, supposed to be slate shingles, with the blue book. Not anything specified at the moment, but not really.
Just painted the cottage, it's not an oil. That's probably.
What's happening on floor plans? I know they're a little out of our jurisdiction, but I'm trying to understand the floor plans.
All right, so if you see here, on the lower level at Bank Avenue, this is a double door here. You walk in and you either go to your right if you want to use the accessible ramp that goes to the site, or you go left and you go up the
Gotcha.
stair, up to the higher level, and up to the closet area.
So this is, if I understand this right, you're basically constructing what amounts to be an enclosed stairway to get from.
Yeah.
Correct.
So
Now,
it's not really.
It's really kind of an elaborate staircase.
Well,
It's
it's
not
like-
really a building that's
It's a
gonna
bridge.
be used for it.
It's a bridge between two grades.
Right, okay.
And we were thinking that it needed to be covered because in case of rain, et cetera, people need to have shelter. And then it also needs to have that security. And Jordan mentioned the doors, when closed, obviously that the property is closed, but at the same time to welcome people with the gates open.
Again, this is sort of potentially out of the jurisdiction, maybe not, but what it's missing is a really fabulous chandelier in that glass window. That is.
It's not designed that, it's not.
So you said slate roof. Does the cottage have slate roof?
Cottage has slate roof, that's just the stone garden structure. It's a slate roof, it's just the mansion that has the oak.
You're real slate?
We've done it on the cottage, that was done about 5 to 6 years ago. The garden structure at the same time, and the roof was.
scroll up on these next page, there's a rough superimposed view of, again, like you're saying, you can barely see it, if at all, from next to the street, you have to be in the driveway.
Those pavers aren't currently there,
No,
are they?
no. There's no idea, those kind of closet area, it's just kind of.
Sure.
So, garden structure aligns with the newly designated entrance to the cottage. So, what we're creating is a public courtyard that then will greet, the public will be drawn into from this gateway. And at the same time, hopefully it draws them also into the railroad when we move on to that station.
I think it's an amazing addition to Bank Avenue. I mean, to go up 6 feet, it's gonna be beautiful. They're the best cottage you brought.
Yeah, I want to commend you folks for such an amazing project. It's frankly rare that we see folks come before the board with this much design detail and really, attention to historic preservation with a new structure in particular. I'll entertain a motion to
Well, I'll definitely
approve.
motion to approve.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Second, all those in favor? Motion carries. Good luck.
Very much.
That's actually back avenue.
It's awesome.
Yeah, to connect those two, that would be beautiful. That's
Outstanding.
that person.
Paula, do you want to quickly introduce or review COA for 233 Locust Street, please?
233, I do not believe anybody was here for that. You're here for 234, correct?
So,
So they want to install an aluminum sign above the doorway. Um, We can do you want to skip over this one and do theirs?
yeah, why don't we
since
do
they're here?
that? I'll entertain a motion to move down the schedule to, or move down the agenda rather to 234 so that we can entertain your application as there's nobody here for the 233. I have a motion to move ahead.
I'll motion to it.
Second,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, let's move on to 234 Locust Street then. We'll come back to 233. 234. Paul?
They would like to install a sign on the front and the back of the shop. With it being attached to the wall with galvanized screws.
You don't have that in your packet?
No.
Looks like this.
Yeah.
It's right at the
There it is,
very
there it is.
back.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
This is 236.
It's 236 and 236.
Do we have the wrong address?
It says 236. According to county, it's 234.
Okay,
Interesting.
yeah,
One of those.
I looked around at the other one and it was in the back and it was all confusing.
Yeah.
Do you want to describe the project?
Yes, I
or-
do want to, first of all, my name is Hamid, I'm the owner of the property, and my fellows, they rented out the shop for me, and they asked me to come with them and speak and give the details. So at the front of the shop, we have mentioned that it's going to be an aluminum signboard up there, but it really doesn't matter the type or the material of the sign, because we didn't have any idea what type of sign Borough approves or gives permission to put on. That's why that's the thing sign company gave us, like this is a possibility. So like if that's not going to work with in this, like in the Borough, so we can change it to any other preferences. Like if you say, okay, you can go ahead with this since it's a historical building, we are okay to follow that.
So is, by the looks of it here, you're not proposing to alter the storefront at all. You're just going to affix the sign to, you're not removing any of that molding up there or anything.
No, we're not removing anything from there. It will, the new sign will go right on top of it. So here the question is, this was one question I want to ask you here, like the sign is now like covering all those alterations, all those parts, like the white trims and then over top, like this was the question, like it's gonna kind of block the view how the building is looking like. So is it still okay to put the sign like as shown on that, or we have to go with a smaller, tinier thing which can fit into the two trims there?
No, there's no requirement there. in that regard, no.
My question would be, why wouldn't you paint the glass? Like where the 236 is, it's wrong. That is a plain piece of, most of the time, the sign would have been painted on that glass. Or it would be vinyl letters. But having the wrong address would be a real problem as a store.
Which glass you?
Where it says 236.
Okay, right
That's a
there.
flat glass
Yeah.
panel. So back when this was actually a store before, there would have been their name would have been on that flat glass panel.
So
Maybe.
Are you saying to remove the 236 or overlay it with something?
Remove the 236 and put the sign on that piece, and then put the address back on the door or something like that, so it has the correct address.
The problem with that, Steve, is that signs in the historic district can't damage or require removal of historic materials.
So the 236 is considered historic?
I think in this case, yeah, I think it is.
I don't know that the 236 is, but it looks like there's leaded glass.
Yeah,
Yeah, the leaded glass you
kind
wouldn't
of,
want to mess with.
you know.
But if you put vinyl letters over that or had it painted, because the 236 is definitely not original.
No, I think I'm thinking more of the glass part.
Right, I wouldn't want to replace the glass,
236.
but I would have that either painted or vinyl letters.
Just for the info, I have been told that the 236 letter was there when previous owner bought it 24 years ago. That's the history of that.
So here's my thing, guys, and you can see it in the picture here. This window here with these letterings on it. I actually sat on the board. That was probably 15 years ago now when we actually didn't approve that, and there was a bit of a discussion about it, and the guy just kind of
Did it
figured
anyway.
out a way to get around it. And I don't remember the Parma sign. I don't think I was on the board when the Parma sign was installed. But and I've been saying, because I was on the historic board, the hard board, I think starting in 2010 was the first time I was on it. And so there's special regulations for signs in historic districts, and one of them is that you can't change the stuff and all that. But the one of the conditions is the Historic Architectural Review Board shall ensure that the proposed sign is appropriate compared to the style, period, type, size, and scale of the building and zoning district for which it's proposed. We don't really know what that means in relation to historic context, and I've been saying that for some time now, that the borough didn't give us enough guidelines there what that looks like. When I was in grad school, I lived in the Poconos for a bit, and they were working on a uniform sign ordinance up there, so that like every sign in the downtown business district looked relatively the same. You know, they had like a color palette to choose from, and a size and shape category to choose from, you know, things like that. We've never had that here. So like you know, you look at the Parma sign and you look at the B&T sportswear stuff on the window. I don't know that what our applicant here is proposing is out of line for the district that
Well, no,
he's,
considering the pizza shop in the next door is, you know.
Right.
it's arguably a better sign than
Correct,
Yeah.
yes.
You know, but then you do have, there's a number of properties downtown that have signs that protrude, would be, you know, like a hanging sign that, right, you know, there are a number of those downtown too, which I am partial to, but I don't know that it would work on this building. Anyway, that's my comments for consideration. I don't necessarily know that this is not appropriate.
I would say it's in keeping with the neighbors if that's the effect that the ordinance says we're supposed to judge on.
Is it going to be illuminated?
It says not,
It's a,
yeah, it says not, non-illuminated sign panel.
I think, um, so there's the paneling that it goes over top, and I think it could, much like the Parma sign around it has a border, a white reveal around the exterior and the darker border. You could do something similar to the same colors. Maybe even the sign becomes a little bit bigger, but it could speak to the paneling behind it architecturally and tie in a little bit better.
Yes, but that, in that case, it's not gonna match the building paint itself, because Parma, the sign is white, gray, lighter gray, like near to white, because the building paint is gray. That's why it's gonna look good in there. But where in our case, our building is almost red, maroon. If you put there like whiter or like with a black border on it, it will be totally opposite thing.
No, it could match the white. It's an idea to kind of make it look a little more of the time period.
yeah, I mean, I think it's a good idea where you have the white trim pieces or on the top of the building that the sign's going to go over top. If the outline of the sign was the color of those white trim pieces,
Okay.
is that what you're saying, Matt? So it sort of frames it and sort of makes it look like it's part of those trim pieces.
Yeah, you're covering up some rectangular molding, and so I'm saying borrow that language of the rectangular molding.
And make it bigger, so it.
Yeah,
fits the-
make it a little bigger. You can still have maybe it's not an oval, but you can still have it sort of displaying information in two different zones.
Oh, I got it.
So he's making a whole panel to go over there. So you have more space to work with, and it would actually mimic the building that's there better, which is actually nice. Because you'd have that same
So
panel.
it means this
Yeah.
frame
Yeah.
Yeah,
will come here, up, goes up, it will be like, to the visual side of it, it will feel like the trim is traveling around the side.
Right, yes.
To actually.
right, but it wouldn't. But it would
It would
have
look
that
like it's
appearance, right? Is that
So
what
your
you're
sign,
saying?
instead of being brought in, would go the whole way across the building. So you could have more space to make a bigger sign.
In some ways, I'm saying give the sign a little bit of a frame to anchor it, much like the molding is and the panels are anchored.
But now are we messing with the amount of square footage you're allowed to have for a sign?
I think that's
Well below the square footage.
I thought we were allowed to do colors.
well, we're not. It's just a suggestion.
Oh, so we're not requiring
No.
it, we're suggesting?
Yeah.
Okay,
Just give an idea to make the sign
I see.
And hopefully your sign would read
better.
correct.
Is there a preference to change the yellow color into white too?
Do you think it would, I mean, white would look better with the existing facade. Do you think it would inhibit its ability to read the sign if it was white? Would it read from the street the same way?
Should, yeah.
McDonald's, yes.
Yeah.
McDonald's.
That's why McDonald's.
Yeah, white is fine.
Right.
Exactly.
I mean, I like the white idea, but
I agree with you. Yeah, I mean, too. I just think it's hard for us to say anything if you look at the other buildings around it.
right,
Nobody's being consistent.
right.
Read your statement again.
The Historical Architecture Review Board shall ensure that the proposed sign is appropriate compared to the style, period, type, size, scale of the building, and zoning district for which it's proposed. The proposed sign must be appropriate with other signs in the district.
So I would say, I would put to the board to consider that to make it more like the style and the period of the Victorian facade, it could be worth adding a border around it to frame it.
Are you saying like the Parma sign sort of has
Sim,
that?
yes, yeah,
that-
have that little around the perimeter. And if there were, if I would propose to approve it pending that change happens. I would say that they wouldn't have to bring it back again to us, but that's what I'm putting to the board to consider. And if you can change the color from yellow to white, those two conditions.
For us, yes.
So we have a motion to approve the COA with the change from yellow to white and a white border added around the sign.
Evocative of the molding.
Evocative of the mold.
Evocative is
I'm
more
saying
accurate.
replicating.
He wants
I
to
don't know.
make it the size of he wants to make it the size of that whole front piece. So it's basically you're covering that piece with it. So it's
Are
not
you
just-
saying that
He's going the whole front of the store front is what he's doing. He's doing this.
that's what you want to do now?
Well, I'm not,
Because then it fits.
that's a good point. Yeah.
You're making
yeah,
it fit, so
Yeah.
it looks like we're not changing the facade of the building. So the sign goes up there and mimics the architecture of the building and gives them more of a canvas to work on. Because this basically is a piece of aluminum nailed up against the building. Is basically what that is. If he goes with his idea, it'll look like the molding with it in. It'll look more like it was built there.
Is that okay? I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's
I could go either way. I wasn't thinking that exactly, Nathan. I was thinking I was okay if it got a little taller, but I think you're onto something.
Well, I mean, if you, all these storefronts, if they all would get more consistent with their signs, it would have a cleaner look and be better for everybody who was there instead of everyone's sign looking.
To Nathan's point, it would look integrated with the architect.
Correct.
Do you see what he's saying?
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
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 And it would make, the sign people could lay your lettering out easier for it too.
So where you,
you're going to
No,
go
not just
over
last.
top of that existing molding, but the molding is then going to go on the sign, correct?
Right, but in theory, this molding, you could actually have a panel cut that went in between that molding and went right in between this. So
That's
that
gonna
way
be
you keep,
small though.
but that's what,
Yeah, that's kind of small. We can take the entire space,
how big is that?
make a sign, and then make
Yeah,
a
you
new
could do that.
molding around it.
Yeah.
Of course, it's gonna look a little bit wider
Yeah.
than this. It's 30 inches. This is 30 inches. So when we come here, it will only give us like 16 and a half inches, which is too small. So we will make this entire space. and
You do
put
30
molding
inches the whole thing, so if you did 30 inches the whole way, it would just cover that top and make it look like the top.
yeah, and then instead of having a double stack where it says groceries, ATM, lottery, that could be one level.
Correct. That's why I'm saying, are we getting out of our square footage? Because we're staying 30 inches the whole way across.
So the square footage is in the downtown commercial district, the square footage maximum area of a wall sign is 10% of the area of the building side on which the sign is attached.
Well, you're not 10%.
Right.
But that way, if you,
Might be at 5.
basically what you're suggesting is he just makes it a little longer.
And the molding could just be a color change in an aluminum.
Right.
It could be all one piece of aluminum, but just with the color change.
And still going over top of the existing mold.
I think so, yeah. I think you just hang it and it fills that space.
So like the Parma sign isn't an actual molding around the border.
No.
It's just a color.
It's a color.
Yeah.
Printout. So they could do the same printout, but make it bigger, so it just covered that whole facade, and it looked like it was part of the facade. Maybe a little more seamless.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It gives them more space to put a sign together.
I make a motion to approve pending that it fill the
All right,
panel
make that motion.
Yeah.
and have a frame and then the color change. So the three things.
So we have a motion to approve the COA with the design altered such that it would fill the existing, what do you call that?
Storefront,
Existing storefront top,
architrave.
architrave. Can you spell that? And color change from yellow to white with a color change border, with border. Right.
With
Yeah,
border.
right,
The background will stay red, yeah.
Right.
Correct.
yeah. Right,
Yeah.
The yellow becomes white and then there's a white border.
right. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Steve seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. You're welcome.
Thank you. I have one more case.
Oh, yes.
This is my personal case. I really want to get rid of it because it's so confusing.
Well, here's a question. Can you make the 6 a 4?
Don't say no.
But a sign person could come in and take that 236 off and replace that, and you would never know the difference.
Is it painted?
Is it painted or is it vinyl?
It's not vinyl.
It must be painted. It's there for 25 years.
Yeah, but
But I
There's-
cannot put 34 even there, 34 there too. Because if I would put 34, then I have to put a B there.
Okay.
I have to put 234 to the center,
Well, here's a
Sure.
question. Can you just,
234A and then 234B.
can you take the 236 off and leave the Locust Street?
Yes.
But that does not meet Columbia zoning. I just went through that. They want the actual address on the building.
Can he put it elsewhere on the front?
So actual.
Like on the door?
You could put on the door.
Yeah.
But are we getting in trouble with messing with historical numbers now?
I don't know.
But I
So,
mean-
is the actual address 234B?
Where's 234A?
It's the other side.
I think
So according to the post office, I'm going to assume it probably comes in as 234 and 236. Is that how mail's received?
You want to know what pain I'm going through?
Because I think I walked down there with Jeff Seibert in regards to this, if I recall.
I was there.
Okay. So according to county, it is 234 Locust. And I can tell you, this is one of those, and I'll show right to you here. It's also known as 238 and 240. Well,
What does the deed say?
234. This is how some of our
Yeah, but usually what happens is the post office comes in, and the post office, when they change it, they tell you what it's supposed to be. And then you are supposed to do a deed restriction to change that, because that becomes a huge mortgage problem. So that should have been changed with the post office saying, this is what it's known as, and then it goes on as a deed restriction.
So what may have to happen is you and I will have to go to the post office
I
and
can
speak with the
tell you,
postmaster.
there's a house on my street, diagonal from me, where the post office refuses to acknowledge the fact that that home has two addresses. One tiny little single home has two addresses. So they had to put one on one side of the door and the other on the other side of the door. So there's two addresses on either side of the door.
But that can be appealed to it, because that's, we run into that all the time, but when you get into, like, that affects him for his tenants, because that's what Google recognizes, that's how people get their directions to go there, deliveries go there. She's running a grocery store there where people are gonna probably DoorDash from it.
I mean, from my standpoint, I think Paul is right. I think you have to figure it out with the post office, but I wouldn't necessarily have a problem with you. I think you ought to keep it, but I think you can change it to 234B.
Yeah.
But I think
agree.
you ought to keep the gold lettering and the locust street there, because I think it's got a rich detail.
That was my question. I have no problem changing that to 234B. Problem is, I cannot color match that.
They could scrape it off and paint it on.
So,
Yeah, they could
that's easy.
redo
I'll
it,
scratch it
yeah.
off, I'll
Yeah.
put on a new.
Yeah.
vinyl or new
Yeah.
paint, doesn't matter, but it's not gonna.
Well, I think you ought to do it in paint the way that it's done.
Right.
But that paint is old paint. very
Sure,
old.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
It's not gonna match it.
right.
But if a new letter painter comes in, he can match it as good as he can.
Yeah, they're gonna color match that the best they can.
It's not gonna be
Scrape it off.
perfect. You can already, I could be wrong, but it looks like the 236 does not match the font of the
Right.
Locust Street.
Yeah, it's been changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But usually what they do is they make a stencil, slap it on the glass, and paint over it. It's not hand painted. It hasn't been hand painted in 50 years.
Yeah, if the borough has no problem with the paint itself, then what I'll scrap it and I'll put a vinyl there, saying 234B plus Locust Street, but this is made out of vinyl, not paint.
You can get them to paint. They cut a stencil and just paint it. Most, any sign company will still paint the glass.
I mean, you could paint it yourself probably.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a glass stencil.
Yeah.
I think it'd be preferable to stay with the paint.
Yeah.
I don't think the vinyl
That's,
would have
that's
that.
something I want to know.
Vinyl could not weather very well, and
Vinyl's not gonna have that look.
Yeah.
No,
That-
the other
that
thing
look, I
is
think,
vinyl
is
will peel on that glass.
Yeah.
It'll get hot and peel.
Okay, but the other thing is we didn't discuss about the backside, what's the alley, so the parking lot, or it doesn't matter.
We could not.
I think the size, I think the color, whatever color goes to the front goes to the back.
But you
Correct.
can't see that from the street,
We cannot.
so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think that's fine, but I think the color should.
Color should
limit
match,
what's gonna
yeah.
be out front.
Thank you.
So I just want to put in 2 cents here. You will need to come back to the Borough Council meeting. We'll make contact with you, let you know when that's going to be for their final approval before you can do anything. Okay? Correct. Typically, it would be, what is today? The 9th? 22nd. Should be the 22nd of April. Okay? You will get notification of that. The second thing I want to say, somebody should have came down yesterday and spoken with perhaps one of you in regards to a flashing, blinking. Okay, so that is not permissible without, okay? Anything flashing, blinking, scrolling, okay? Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I have a confusion. It's not approved yet, it means.
Harb has approved it. Council now has to approve it.
We just recommend.
Thank you.
Okay?
Yep, you're welcome.
Have a good night. So,
Now that they're gone, I need to ask, I thought we don't do color.
we
I'm
don't.
confused.
No,
We don't.
But
They were
we
just.
just
but we-
required them to do the color.
we can make that recommendation.
No, didn't we just require them to do the back the same color as the front?
But it's a sign. We're trying to keep it in
I think,
concert with the,
But in the back, first of all, no one can see it from the street, which is our requirement. And then on top of it, we don't require colors.
well, I think to the code, I think it's to match the style. I think we could speak, I mean, it's one thing to speak to the facade or the architecture, but I think with a sign, maybe, and I could be wrong.
If you really wanted to be politically correct on that sign, you could have said you wanted to go leave, because that's what would have been done originally.
The numbers.
The numbers and the sign would have probably been
Yeah.
a gold leaf sign. Because I was actually had an office in a complex that required us to have colonial signage. And we had to have wooden signs that were carved with gold leaf.
see, that's what I mean. Like, that to me is what the borough really needs to do.
You mean a
in the-
uniform
In the case, yeah, in the cases of signs, particularly signs in the historic district, I think there needs to be something like that. Like, this is what our signs are gonna look like downtown.
Yeah, they should really do that. But I will tell you, I'm looking it up right now. That property address is 234 to 24.
That's a conundrum. It's not our conundrum.
Well, but I'm saying, I feel bad for him because that's not
Yeah.
fair.
Yeah,
There
Because
are
that-
many
no,
buildings in
you're
the
right.
borough though with the same exact thing.
Yeah, that's the post office.
It's
My office is now in a complex where they won't acknowledge my address.
So moving back up the agenda to 233 Locust Street.
Can I get information here quick before we move on? So it was approved with conditions that the yellow lettering was going to change to white. That's one. And the design was to fill the existing architrave.
Technically, it's a freeze, but you could, it's an interchangeable term, yes.
So what is the definition of that word, architrave?
It's basically the top space of in this case, a bay between two pilasters. You got pilasters on either side of the storefront.
Okay,
So an architrave is that space
Okay.
at the top.
all right.
So she's gonna have the nicest sign I've ever really around.
Yeah. If you think of the old Greek temples, you know, and where the pediment is standing up,
Mhm.
the space below the pediment is the
Is-
architrave.
Okay,
And then the column.
Jeez, learning a lot here.
yeah,
That's a lot
But
of
I agree
numbers.
that the borough should have an ordinance in this district that says this is what you're allowed to have.
Well, I think tonight we took a step towards pushing them towards architectural consistency between the branding and the sign and the architecture. I think the direction we recommended tonight was a step in the right direction. If Jonathan pulled up the.
I understand that, but is that fair to them when the people on either side of them can do whatever they want?
Correct. But like if you look at the facade of the building that's up to the right, that is just, it's T11.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's terrible.
Well, I think one of the, and I'm one board member, but I think we should push in the direction we think is right for the downtown. And I'm glad Jonathan brought up that code. If we start pushing owners to have signage that is harmonious with their architecture behind it, that can be seen in 3-10 years.
Correct. I agree with that. But if you look at your first application, they're putting a $250,000 staircase to go from a parking lot.
Yeah.
I mean, it's beautiful what they're doing. I mean, that is a above and beyond, most people would want to just put a, you know, a gravel walkway in. And now we're talking about putting aluminum and vinyl siding on a historical district building.
And that's my point, that we don't have enough uniformity or enough structure for us to say, this is what a sign needs to look like in the historic.
Right, which they really need to do that, because we just beat up the hotel. When the hotel wanted to come here, all the things about doing from the outside. And they did jump through some hoops on that hotel. I mean, they really took your, you know,
Yeah, I agree.
pretext to, those grills, they changed all that. Like that, if I was that architect, I would be like, wait a minute, you approved this, but you wrote me on this?
I mean, the other part, I think that is relevant to consider is that it's a sign, and as long as they're not changing anything on the building property, the sign can be taken down.
True, I agree with you, but I'm just, if you're trying to be historically correct in a historical district, there should be uniform.
Yeah.
Which is what you're speaking to.
Yeah.
But like, they really need, if they want to have this district and they want it to be a certain shopping level, then there should be restrictions.
Well, let's,
And it should be
just a
black and white.
question, like a step further. Should our board recommend to Borough Council that they enact a sign ordinance of uniformity?
Without like-
Are you making a motion?
Well,
Because I would
my
entertain that
question-
motion.
Like, my question is,
I
what
agree
are
with
the
you.
parameters
Yeah.
of that?
I think it's
You
a
know what I
great
mean?
point,
We need
Althea.
to have parameters.
Or more criteria to be met.
Yeah, I think what Borough Council really ought to do, the borough manager, or Paula, God bless her, somebody really ought to look at some other towns'
Yeah,
sign ordinances in their historic district and get an idea of what that flavor looks like.
I think we should take a group trip to Middleburg, Virginia.
But there are historical towns that you go in and it's down. And even if you look at Elizabethtown, downtown Elizabethtown, like they require Hickey Hess to approve the exterior colors of their buildings. I mean, they took that to heart.
You gotta figure, we'll say 100 years ago in Columbia, there was probably one, maybe two people that made signs in town.
Right.
And they just made all the signs that look the same, basically, because that's what they did.
That was their material.
Right,
And
and
the
they
sign
only had
painter
a palette.
painted
color
by hand.
palette
Yeah.
So big.
And carved by hand.
Yeah.
Right, I mean, that's probably how that worked. Certainly in the days of Bloom Williamsburg, you know.
I made a note.
Okay, perfect.
We'll add it to the
Did
list.
you make a note that we're gonna expense a trip?
Yeah.
No, I left that out.
But I just can't see Borough Council wanting to.
I mean, really, it saves everybody's headache.
Yeah, and there needs to be just, this is the rule.
Yeah, right.
I'll second Althea's motion.
Let's take a vote. We'll make it official. All those in favor?
Aye.
There you go. We made that official, Paul.
Now, what about this other one? Because there's nobody here, how does that work?
I don't know. So can we table this, or should we table this next one?
Well, they were notified.
I don't remember ever.
Can I circle back to Althea's comment quick before we move on? What are we suggesting to the Borough Council? Speak to materiality, fonts?
I think
What-
everything.
Everything.
Okay,
But
but they don't know what everything is necessarily.
no,
Well,
in
they
fact,
should have a
they'll
signed
probably
ordinance.
come back to us and say,
Yeah.
yeah, well, what would it say?
Correct,
What would the
okay,
ordinance
okay.
say?
Great.
Well,
But
then that's
and I
fine.
think that goes to this next one in that if we can control the materiality, what material it's going to be, fonts that, work with the architecture.
Well, then we also have to look at how, or council has to look at, how do they handle the grandfathering that? Because if you make a new applicant
Correct.
go under the parameters and then you're stuck with these guys on either side here,
I think it just
I
it is
think
what it
It had to
is.
be grandfathered.
Yeah.
Because I will tell you, like when I said about this whole thing with E-Town, they gave store owners money to replace those.
Right.
And I don't think that's happening.
No, but that I think is the only way you'd really get around the grandfathering.
Yeah.
Or you would have some store owners who would say, hey, I want to do that, and do it.
But then if you look at this next property.
Correct.
There's nothing historical about
Mm-hmm.
that. It's got 2111 on it. It's got regular residential windows in front of it. So how could you try to really hold them to being a politically correct sign that wouldn't really match that at all?
Well, my question with it is, why do you need both? Like, because they're asking for two here. It says one, but they're actually asking for two if you look at the details.
I thought the one is supposed to go in the back.
No, see on the front here? This is one, and this is two.
And the larger one is just a banner.
It's a wall
Like a
sign,
banner,
yeah.
yeah.
But it's still signage.
Sure.
But if you look at it present day, there's nothing there.
Right.
So they're asking for two.
For that ink chaser sign that is an appendage, for lack of better words, you need to make sure that has ADA clearance under the bottom edge. Probably does, but 7 feet 6 from the sidewalk to the.
So I don't know, Paula, can we, I don't know if we can do this without the applicant here. I don't remember ever having a case.
Where they weren't here.
Right.
But we can
Are they
define it.
required to be here?
I'm sorry.
Are they required to be here?
Are they required? I don't know that.
Yeah, but if they're not here, then it doesn't have to be approved.
Right. That's pretty much my question. Do we not have to approve it, or like my question?
Well, the
That-
problem is, I think we could table it because they're not here, because we can't ask them questions about
Right.
Right.
their application.
The sign above the door, is that in keeping with the neighbors? That would be a big question, because it's really ugly.
Well, there's a rocket ship to the right, have a pizza.
Yeah, it looks like Level Up is next door, and theirs is flush, not hanging down in the headspace.
Well, but I would think they're gonna keep that sign above the door. And I get why they want two signs, because there's two doorways there. So they're probably trying to keep people from, one's probably for the apartments upstairs and one's probably for their shop. So it's probably not clearly marked which doors.
Is
they're
that
supposed to
a
use.
doorway or an opening?
I'm assuming it's a doorway to go upstairs.
Oh, I thought it was some kind of opening. But I thought it was the alley between the buildings.
It could be.
So there are no residential units in that building. It's a sheet metal in the rear, I believe, yes. And ink chasers in the front.
But they,
Mm. Mm. I think the sheet metal is on the second floor.
because I'm assuming that the second floor is a vacant apartment.
Okay, the applicant or the applicant's representative shall be at the HARB meeting at which the applicant's application will be reviewed to answer any questions HARB members may have regarding the application.
But no one's here.
We have to table it. Well, I mean, we don't have to table it. We have to do something. We can't consider it.
Could we, just out of curiosity, Google the location and look if that's an opening or a door?
What?
Right
Yeah.
where her cursor is. Is that an opening or a doorway?
Oh, I think that's. I think that's I want to say that's a stairway to the second floor.
That's what I think it is too.
But
But
would
we
you-
don't even know what's on the second
The
floor.
would you
second
have
floor
that
is empty.
open, that
Yeah.
vagrancy
Yeah.
could occur in that stairwell. That's weird.
Yeah,
What'd you say about the second floor, Jonathan?
the second floor is empty. Yeah, it's just a big open. Um, well, um, if we have to move along on the agenda because the applicant isn't here, pursuant to section 130-25, decision of applications under the Historic District Ordinance, subpart A, the applicant or the applicant's representative shall be at the HARB meeting at which the applicant's application will be reviewed to answer any questions HARB members may have regarding the application. Therefore, we cannot consider this application tonight. Paula, is there anything under the administrative approvals that we need to discuss?
No, the only question I had, Althea answered it earlier, so. My question is though, do you need to make a motion to table this? With the 230,
I don't think we have to, but we
Okay.
certainly can. I'll entertain a motion to table to the applicant for the application for 233 Locust Street.
Motion.
Via motions, Matt seconds. All those in favor, signify by say aye.
Aye.
Motion's tabled. No public comments. Is there any other business before the board? Seeing none, hearing none. The next meeting of the Columbia Borough Historical Architectural Review Board is scheduled for May 14th, 2025. Seeing no further business, this meeting is adjourned.